We live on an island called Montreal, and we make a lot of noise because we love each other.
Are we going?
Yep.
Okay, so let's just hop right into here. So, like, we were talking about this a little before, but I was laughing because I thought this is just possibly the worst album to start our brand new podcast with.
Why? Why, John?
Because of the titles, man.
The titles.
The titles.
The titles.
It's not friendly for the children.
It's not. If only it was Wu-Tang, then it would be for the children.
For the children. And so, but I said, screw it. Let's do it anyway. But, first off, we need some introductions.
Yeah, well,
so, welcome, everyone, to the Geek Bubbles. As we get unnamed, we're gonna go on that. We're gonna cover this. But it's the Unnamed Music Podcast. I'm John.
I'm Dylan.
And today, we're just going to kind of get things kicked off. We're going to talk about what this podcast is going to try to do. And then we're going to talk about this little album from the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra. But just to start, let's thank these listeners who we have, all 10 of them. Let's thank all 10. Hey, Casey. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah.
Let's thank them for joining us and supporting this project because...
Thank you.
Yes. Because, you know what? It's because of you guys that we do this. I mean, because if no one was listening, there's no point in doing it.
Well, I'd still do it.
That's true. We just like talking.
Value, yeah.
It's easy to put a mic up there. So... we don't got a name for this, but I was thinking about it, and if we're gonna go on, the Geek Bubble, if we're gonna go on the whole bubble theme, I got the title.
You got the title.
Musical Suds.
Musical Suds. Looking like it. Let's do it live. Yes.
So it's official unless someone has a better idea,
which they won't, because Musical Suds is the
let
best.
us know. Or Twitter or SoundCloud or whatever.
We have
right now.
Yes,
we're Musical Suds. We could even do a thing where we just change our podcast name every week,
just like the Silver Mount Zion Memorial
Orchestra. It's so appropriate. But so people who are listening to this, they're just sort of wondering, what music podcast? What the fuck does that mean? And really, what we're going to try to do with this podcast is me and Dylan every single week have an album, a newer album. This is new music that we get and we listen to, and we go and we talk about it. And
repeatedly.
Yes, we have to listen to it a lot. Now, you might not have heard of it. You may have heard of it.
I'd be surprised.
I mean, yeah, most of the albums we're going to talk about, you probably haven't heard because, I don't know, maybe just because you don't listen to the radio or whatever. And usually this podcast is to try to encourage you to maybe go out and check it out if, you think it sounds like something you would like.
Broaden your horizons.
Exactly. Because me and Dylan, we love music. We love sharing music with people. And, that's what we're going to try to do with this. And really what we're going to try to do is also engage in some awesome discussion. And and if we're kind of reviewing the album, so if it's bad, then you'll know. We could review the new Coldplay album, which I believe just came out, and we could
probably tell you that it's not that great.
We could say it's terrible.
I like Coldplay. It could be good.
It could be good. Yeah, I like Coldplay. So but it could be really bad. So that is what we're gonna try to do, and we don't even quite have even formula or some sort of method about how we're gonna go about this, and it's something that with each recording we're going to get better and better and better at, and so you can enjoy us more and more and more, and not have to listen to our pointless rambling. So we got
It's not pointless. It's not pointless.
Every word we say is worth your time.
Just cling on.
So all that fucking bullshit out of the way.
Let's
talk about this album, man.
The Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra, and what is this album?
The name of this album, quote, "Fuck Off get free. We pour light on everything. Unquote. Now, let's get a little history about this album. So, I think a name that's more likely to get known than the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra is Godspeed You Black Emperor, which is like, what I mean is like, if we got 10 people who know the Silver Mount Zion, you know, you're gonna have about 20 people who probably know what Godspeed is.
Just slightly more well known.
For those of you who do not know Godspeed, Godspeed Black Emperor is a band out of Canada who have been around since the mid to late 90s. And they kind of were one of the pioneers of post-rock music. And so, to those who do not know what post-rock music is, I think the best way to describe it is taking like classical compositions with rock instrumentations. They're very long, drawn-out tracks that are instrumental, and they're all about these slow builds that come to these very climactic, just huge climaxes that
very well worded.
Yeah, that just it's very explosive music. And Godspeed You Black Emperor was considered, it probably is considered widely by most post-rock fans the best post-rock band out there. And it's really, I mean, usually the number of members is usually always changing, but it's usually around nine guys. And, you know, being such a big band from Canada, they also have a lot of side projects with a lot of other people. And these side projects can include, you know, Low Pan Am, Silver Mount Zion, which is now called the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra. And,
which was previously called the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra and Tra-La-La Band.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a whole lot of nonsense going on there. But what you're getting out of this is that you have Godspeed Black Emperor, and you have this much lesser group called the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra, who is been around since also the late 90s. They kind of came around the same time.
In 99, actually, like just at the brink of 2000.
And a lot of the members on this band were in Godspeed Black Emperor. So, to start off, go listen to Godspeed Black Emperor because they're an amazing band. And if you like that sound, then I really recommend that you check out the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra. And put shortly, I also recommend you check out this album we're going to review. But I think we also have to talk about just what is the Silver Mount Zion, because they're a really unique group, especially compared to Godspeed, because Godspeed is about making these sort of beautiful songs, these like acts that are like 20 minutes long, and they have a lot of strings, and they're very like atmospheric, and they are extremely what's the word? I don't have a word. They are tracks that are epic. For example, they feel like Lord of the Rings of music. There's so much going on.
They are packed with emotion for something that doesn't have any lyrics. If you listen to Godspeed and you actually like take the time to just sit down and let yourself become absorbed in it, you'll find that you'll just start like becoming like overcome with how well everything fits together, and it's unique in that specific way.
It is truly Godspeed makes music that is truly stories without words.
Yes.
And the Silver Mount Zion is all of the members of Godspeed Black Emperor doing something very similar along those lines, but it's much more of them not doing their formula, because Godspeed's formula is starts out very simple and goes into this giant build, and then, you know, calms down again and does and repeats. Starts out very simple and goes into a giant build. But when the Silver Mount Zion Memorial Orchestra started out, they were very similar just in the sound. Like, it was still very atmospheric. But they weren't having these giant builds. They were like consistently these mellow tracks. They were much more just about the atmosphere, and it was actually really, really effective music. The first album those guys came out with is an album that I love. it's haunting. It's very haunting music. It's just because the first album they had was actually about like people that have died. It's so like they had like a band member that had died, and they had lost songs about that. And then like the main singer, whose name is Efric Munich, who we're talking about, his dog died, and his name was Wanda. The dog's name was Wanda, and they had a song called For Wanda, and it's just this really sad piano bit that's kind of like in remembrance of his dog that he was loved. And it was really, really effective music. And as you see this go on, and because they're on 7 albums now, throughout the years, Silver Mount Zion was a way of Godspeed You Black Emperor just sort of going through and doing, when they weren't doing Godspeed You Black Emperor, which was, they had expectations of what Godspeed You Black Emperor would be. This was their experimentation. This was everything else. And it's because of that I think we have something like Fuck Off, Get Free, We Pour Light on Everything, which is their latest album that just came out this year. Which, to put it simply, all that atmosphere and that calm and the it's very creepy, that hauntingness is just not gone, but it's very different.
This is actually new to me because this is the first Silver Mount Zion album I've ever listened to. So you told me, you're like, it's like Godspeed because it's got members of Godspeed in it. So I started listening to it, and all of a sudden someone started singing it, and I'm like, what the fuck? That was my first reaction. Like, oh well, that's new.
Yeah. Lyrics.
Yeah, lyrics. Godspeed.
I've never heard those before. I mean, that is the biggest difference of that's by far like the biggest difference with this band, is that they actually have a singer. And not to be like a jerk about this, but hearing their singer for this band is like, oh, that's why Godspeed has lyrics. Because this guy, his name, Efric Munich, is is most of the vocals, and he is, well, let's just say he's an acquired taste. But I mean, that's the nice way of saying it. But the honest way of saying it is that he has no vocal range. His voice is terrible. And in all honesty, it's pretty annoying.
Yeah,
I would say. And especially with the earlier work, which was just, well, I want to say, like I said, slow, atmospheric piano ballads. It was just, it was horrible. I mean, that music was a detriment to his voice. I honestly still don't know why they have him in here. Here it works a lot better, because here these are still long tracks. Most of them are around 10 minutes or longer. Yeah. But they're like noise. They're like noisy rock and roll. It's the kind of music that whenever you put that first track on, no matter what volume you have it at, it's always very loud. It's like every single instrument is just blasting its sound at the speakers. It's always very loud.
To me, it's like the first time I ever heard it come on, the very first song, I was like, oh, Godspeed went into full climax just immediately, and took it off from there, and then somehow found some way occasionally to build it even a little bit higher.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is that these tracks, like post-rock, because I still think they're post-rock, they still change. They still have this very natural progression and turn into something that can be very dramatic. But it's not as reliant on dynamics. It's more reliant on song structure and melody. And I think that actually can create something that is just as interesting as what Godspeed is doing. Really depending on just the listener. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is that you have to understand about this is that if you are a Godspeed fan, you're going into Godspeed, and you're going to this yeah, hell yeah, more incredible atmosphere. No, this is kind of just completely doing away with that. There are still there's still samples here, and because Godspeed's very well known for that, about having these very creepy samples of people talking about nonsense. Well, not nonsense, very important things, but talking, and that's still there, but it's not in the music. It's like an opener.
Yeah. The very first song starts off with a little kid basically going and we make a lot of noise because we love each other.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly because the music is so instrumental. It's kind of a good way of tying the music together, tying the album together. Because when I was listening to this, I wasn't really quite getting what they're getting at, because usually Godspeed is talking about just like fuck the government, and so same thing with Silver Mount Zion. But here it's like I found two things that kind of showed up a lot. I found kids a lot, because there's that kid in the beginning, and like the choruses, like they have these really like repeating choruses in like almost every song. It always sounds like there's like little kids in it, like it's a little kid choir. And I also found like there's always talk about music. Like sampling was like talking about what it is to be an artist. So we like on the last song, the guy's like, music is like a lifestyle. It is something we commit to, and then like in
take away these early.
Yeah.
It's basically like I had some chick saying something about she doesn't see herself as a rock and roll star. She sees herself as someone who makes music.
And I think like there's
doing something.
Yeah, and so there's clearly like they're trying to talk about something. It's not quite as clear to me as what it was, but there is motifs in the music. There's motifs in the albums, and I think that's kind of strange, because when I listen to the lyrics, it's much different. And so like when the song "What We Loved Was Not Enough," that seems like just much more Godspeed in like theme. It is political and talking about like the end of the world and like how everything is just falling down, and maybe they're talking about like the musical world, but it still was kind of confusing. It was these samples, these voice recordings are not matching the lyrics of the album, which I was a little bit confused by. But I still like it was still interesting. I still think it's like a puzzle, and like if someone can figure it out, it's very interesting. But, enough of that stupid nonsense. Let's just talk about the music.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think the first thing we should really just get out of the way is talk about the vocalist.
Actually, before we even do that,
Okay.
we should do tracks. Like, what tracks are there's actually only 6 tracks on this album.
There's 6 tracks.
Like John said before, at around 10 minutes, actually, for the most part, there's a couple 10-minute tracks, a 15-minute track, and then a few of them are about 5 minutes or less, actually. Each of them are actually, like, the first 2 are very similar to each other, and then it just kind of builds into each other and then falls away at the 6th track. But we'll get to that later.
I think you're right. I think,
and it's only 49 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it's a relatively short album, not like super
for
short.
For Godspeed.
For Godspeed.
Criteria.
Godspeed is like
usually,
an hour.
Usually they're a bit longer. Godspeed's last album was actually around that same time. They're kind of they're getting shorter. But the first 2 tracks I think are really similar.
Yeah.
Just in sound. And it's not until we get to like 3, 4, 5, and 6 that we get a lot more diversity in what they're trying to do, and like especially with track 5. Track 5 is very different from the other big tracks.
It stands out a lot. Like 4 is a very short track. It's Little Ones Run. It kind of captures your attention a little bit, and then it leads perfectly into What We Love Was Not Enough.
Yeah, I feel like Little Ones Run is like you have the first 3 songs: Fuck Off, Get Free, Austerity Blues, and Take Away These Early Grave Blues, and those are very just intense tracks. Like they're just wailing these walls of sound at you, like noise rock sound, just constantly. You got these lyrics; they're just like shouting. Like Ephraim Munich is just shouting in his most prepubescent voice, or giving orders, like love each other, and it's so much that I think Little Ones Run is like a breather. It's just like, okay, we got all this tension, I'll just let it steam you out a little bit. And I think Little Ones Run, when I first started listening to the album, it was okay. I was like, all right, but that song really grew on me. That song's
absolutely.
I don't know what's about it, but it's the way I think they've arranged the vocals is very haunting. Like that's actually the one song I actually really like Ephraim Munich's voice, because he has this really like kind of like whimpering tone about talking about the big ones hunt and the little ones run. And I think it's haunting. I like when the Godspeed canon is able to make the music that just sticks with you. I think Little Ones Run really does stick with me. As where the first 3 tracks, which are these intense rock ballads, those are things you just rock out to. Not to say they're not memorable, they're just...
No, the first 2 are definitely memorable.
Yes.
Actually, I love the first 2 tracks. I'm not very big on Take Away These Early Graves.
I agree.
Like,
Actually,
every time I hear it, I'm like, it's just kind of, nothing really happens in it. It's 6 minutes of pretty much the same thing, and that's a big problem for me. While the first 2 are like constantly, like, there is actually stages in the first 2 that really draw my attention, and like there's a haunting part in Austerity Blues where like all the like there's some vocals and it's like chanting in the background, and it really just draws your attention. It's like combined with Godspeed sound, it sounds intense.
I think Austerity Blues particularly is really, really good at just like having those incredibly intense moments, just kind of face shredding intense moments, while having like just moments of subtle beauty. It's beautiful in the most strangest of ways because it's so harsh. And I agree with you on Take Away These Early Grave Blues, particularly I think just because it sounds like just a lesser version of the first 2 songs. Like the first 2 songs are really well thought out, and the third one, it's just sort of like we're hearing the same like just obnoxious, because we're going to talk about the guitar, this very obnoxious guitar, and then the ending of Take Away These Early Grave Blues is just, it's just the most, it's like gut punches. Like it just, the band just keeps throwing these punches right in the stomach of sound, and just like the same lyric of love each other, and it just keeps hitting you again and again, and it's supposed to be effective, but honestly for me it just kind of dragged, went on too long.
Yeah, and the funny part about that is it's a 6-minute track, and the first 2 were 11 minutes and 14, and those go by way faster than the 6-minute track.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, as I was saying, like it does seem like a lesser form because it doesn't really change. It's the same thing. They keep hammering the same thing, while the first 2 seem to actually like flow around with each other, even though they were both very harsh.
Yeah, and I think like what to talk about like the sound of how these guys designed this music. With these first 3 tracks, I feel it's like you have the band is playing like their music, and what sticks out about it is you have the singer singing, the drummer drumming, but you have this one guitar that they just like, it's like the production just like, okay, let's just keep this guitar as like the front lines, and it's just constantly playing. It's like the guitar never stops.
I feel like I just hear like Will Ferrell with the cowbell. It's just like, it needs more
cowbell,
cowbell,
it needs more guitar. It's just constantly there, and it's like it's obnoxious how much they make it like obvious. Yes, the guitar is just absolutely never gonna leave here, but it's like it makes this drone of sound that is just very effective. You can get into it. But what I think is so interesting about it is that there is like a ton of violin work in this album, which I didn't even notice until like a few listens in. I didn't even notice it because the guitar really drowns it out, and it's actually kind of an interesting sound because you have this guitar that's really, really heavy, and these violins are like dancing around it, like as though they're just trying to like sift their way through like the insane amount of guitar.
What's funny is if you listen to the first song, like you have your little sound bit, and then there comes drums. That's actually a really cool beat. And then they throw on the guitar, and the guitar is so loud it drowns out the drums.
I know. like there's a moment on Austerity Blues where it opens up just like really, really strong, and then it kind of just like panders out to this drum beat with this awesome bass line. It is just like, it is so awesome, and you're just like, yeah! And then like that's one of the best moments of the album is when it goes in that bass line, and then like the rest of the instruments come in and is like firecrackers just going like and then it's really, really cool. So those tracks are pretty solid, and like we said, Take Away These Early Grave Blues, it just doesn't reach at the same heights as the first 2. It is a track that feels much lesser. But then we go into the last 2 tracks, the latter half, which is quite different.
Yes.
Because Little Ones Run, like we said, is very soft, it's very haunting, but then you have what I think is like the climax of the album, which is What We Loved Was Not Enough. And this is my favorite track on the album. I think this this is why, like, well, me and you love this band and this group of musicians, because the best way that I think to describe what we love was Not Enough is it feels like a waltz in like the most strangest of ways. Like it has this very it has this very just like you know, kind of like just the structure, just like dun 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 dun. But it's the strangest thing, because while it has that waltz structure to it, it is so much different. It is the most emotional track, I would say. It is where we finally, the guitar is not dominating the music. The violins come in; they actually have a very prominent role. And it all kind of boils up to this ending, which is, I think, incredibly haunting. It has probably, to me, the most haunting last chorus in the entire album, which I think it goes by as when and the days come when we no longer feel, and like you have this beautiful chorus going through that's just singing that over and over and over again. And like while they're singing that over and over again, you have Ephraim Munich with his just incredibly obnoxious voice, just like singing like all this other nonsense. And what we love is not enough. No more, so rise again. They're thinking like we're like really over exaggerating this. When they turn it on, they're like, "Oh my god, this is so true." Right. So you got this, but it's like I think like what they do with that track is so smart, because they had this chorus that chorus you're talking about. It's mostly female vocalists just singing that same line over and over and over again, but it's constantly changing. It's like they're bringing in new vocalists to kind of go for certain parts, and then they leave and bring in new vocalists, and then some other ones leave and they bring in new vocalists, to the point where it's like when it starts, this chorus is very, very pretty, and that's it. But as it keeps going, it becomes something much more haunting as they start bringing in voices that are just not quite meant to create prettiness, but they create something that's more foreboding, more ominous. And it works really well on that level, mostly because you have that chorus going on, but you also have this violin, this soul violin, or maybe it's a cello, and it's sort of just like weeps, it weeps along with the music, like it goes along with the waltz, but it's such a sad song and so haunting that it sticks with you. It really, at least it really stuck with me, and I think that's how this album should have ended. It should have ended with What We Love Was Not Enough.
It should have ended there, but did it, John?
But there's one more.
No, they had to put in another one.
So I think we both agree on this.
Yep.
Track 6 should not be here.
Terrible.
Yeah. You know, I don't even think it's not even the fact of like it's terrible. I mean, for what
just
it
doesn't
is,
belong.
For what it is, you have the 5th track on here. What We Love Was Not Enough. It works so perfectly as like this giant climactic ending. It's like, yes, this is the bookend. This is how we end this album, and it feels so satisfying. And it's like,
but we're gonna put this epilogue in.
And the 6th track,
because we can,
which is called "Rain Through the Roof at the Grand Ballroom," it's deflating. It's like the album keeps going. It feels like it's not very investing, and it's like you feel like you have to stick through the. It's like going to a movie, and you have to. It's like the movie forces you to stick through the credits.
Yeah, like with the idea that maybe there's something at the end.
Yeah.
But there really isn't.
Exactly. Like you keep waiting for this amazing moment to happen, but the music never changes.
For it to finally just finish and like wrap itself up.
Mm-hmm.
But it already did that, and it was already done well. So like this just pales in comparison, and it doesn't work. And every time I hear it, I'm just like, can we not listen to this?
I honestly feel like this is a song they just should have scrapped, like a B-side. It wasn't necessary, and it's very deflating. It's like the momentum that album gets deflates it, and I think I was very disappointed by that. I don't think that that like makes the album bad.
Oh no,
by any
it's only
means.
4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, if you just skip it, you're getting a much better album. But I still, I'm going to stick with the idea that Silver Mount Zion, probably should just do away with it. But
So maybe we should talk about the singer that we meant to do before.
okay, yeah. I mean, we've kind of been over it a little
We've
bit.
touched it a
yeah,
little
but
bit.
let's just if you listen to music and you need very clean vocals,
Don't do it.
don't listen to this album
Don't do it.
because this is an acquired taste, and I don't even think it's really an acquired taste. It's just not very well delivered. Like I think he has. If you're gonna split vocalization up into two categories of there's good technical singing, you can technically hit all these notes really well, and then there's passion, how much emotion you put in your singing. I think he puts emotion into his voice. I just still think it's so grating and it's so hard to get into that if you need some technical prowess, you're not gonna like this at all. But here it works. It's not as bad.
It's not. And I think the reason why it's not is because you have Godspeed backing him. The first time I listened to this album, his voice annoyed the hell out of me. Like, I was listening to it, I'm like, I can't really get into this singing at all. Like, at all. But there was Godspeed, and I'm just hearing Godspeed, and it's awesome, and I'm loving it. I mean, it's not really Godspeed, but there's elements of it, and I can feel Godspeed in it. And, like, eventually, I would say probably on, like, the third listen, I just kind of started to be okay with it, and it worked a little bit more with the album. But also because they had all those others singing, and especially in What We Love Was Not Enough.
Yeah. In a way, I kind of feel like Silver Mount Zion uses vocals here kind of like as just another instrument instead of really vocals, because the band is very, very reliant on choruses here that's go on for a very, very long time. And I just feel like my understanding of the lyrics of this album is very little, and I still got a lot out of the music.
Yeah.
So I think in the same way, like another post-rock band, Sigur Rós, uses their vocalist as just an instrument. I think they do the same thing here, and it works for me. And I think on songs like "Fuck Off, Get Free" and "Austerity Blues," his voice works the best because the music is really intense and like harsh, and I think his harsh vocals kind of fit it. Yeah, they're very fitting.
Yeah.
And on "Little Ones Run," it also works because he brings it down. He makes it a whimper, so it's also very effective. The only time where it really doesn't seem appropriate, or seems like it wouldn't seem appropriate, is on "What We Loved Was Not Enough." But "What We Loved Was Not Enough" is such a complete song. It feels so right. It feels like on "What We Loved Was Not Enough," yes, he's annoying and he's constantly, his voice is constantly cracking, and it's like this last desperate like plea of like, who cares about the sound.
It was in this song that I got the strongest feeling of emotion from it.
I agree.
And that's how I was able to forgive him in that song, because he just, even with all the cracking and everything, it attributed more to an emotion of like you said, like his last desperate like clutch at what was left.
Yes.
It wasn't enough, and he's just kind of like despairing.
And I think that's another reason why the last track fails, is because it's very simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very simple track, and it kind of lets the vocals take over. As where all the other tracks, the vocals were constantly there, but the music was always leading the march. It always felt like it was this prominent thing. And I think when you have the sixth track come in, where the vocals are just like kind of the only thing you can really grab onto to listen, to pay attention with, it just really falls short. But at the same time, I can't help but think that Take Away These Early Grave Blues
I was just gonna bring that up.
would be a lot better if
Without
he was a
him.
better vocalist. Like,
Or just without him.
yeah, I almost like we were complaining about Take Away These Early Grave Blues, but I almost feel like Take Away These Early Grave Blues would be a lot better song if it just had better vocals, because that's where he's the most like just right out there in your face. I think a little bit better. Just
And while it's Take Away These Early Graves is very similar to the first two tracks in abrasiveness, it's a little bit toned down, just a tad bit, and his vocals are brought to the forefront, and it makes them even more noticeably annoying. Because in the first two, like we said, it kind of blends with the instruments. It's harsh, just like the guitar and everything else. But in the third one, it's like they kind of tipped the balance a little bit, and he just came to the forefront and annoyed the hell out of me. So, like, again, with like, punching you in the musical gut,
yeah,
like just over and over and over again, and it's stale after the first few listens.
I would agree. I think this is. I mean, we can just go into like final thoughts now and talk about this. And we'll do the same rating as the movie reviews. So, out of 5 stars, I think you and me have very similar views on this album. I think it's very good. I think it's a very, very accomplished album. I like that the Super Mount Zion Orchestra is changing their music. They're constantly trying something, and I think it's with this album they finally found a sound that works with their vocals. This sound works for what they want. If they want to keep using Ephraim Monic as the lead singer, then this is the sound they should stick with. And I think it's also an album that is finally doing something interesting with post-rock, as where most other post-rock bands they're just not doing anything different. They're like, all post-rock bands are starting to sound the same, and this still feels like post-rock, and yet it feels unique, it feels new, and it feels exciting. I have my issues with it. I think there's, when you have 6 tracks and one of them is a complete dud, that sucks. And I think, like we're talking about, the third track still feels very lesser. And overall, I still wish they just would think about what the vocals are adding in there. But despite that, I actually really enjoyed this a lot. I'm gonna give it 4 stars.
4 stars. I would say that's agreeable. I was actually going to lean more towards like a 3.75, like low 4 star. Like it's barely a 4 star for me, because I mean, when I compare this to other bands that I would give like a 4.5, like Godspeed's most recent album, I would give it 4.5. I loved it. I don't think this really touches that. So 4, yeah. Now, would you recommend this? Would you say, we said in the beginning, if you like Godspeed, if you like this stuff,
That's true. Yeah.
If you want to try something new, could you dive into this just immediately? Like, oh, this, they like this album. It's 4 stars. It must be a pretty good album. Would you say dive right in, try?
Well, what I would say is, if you never listened to post-rock, don't start with this. I would say
the same thing.
Listen to something else. I would say after you've listened to some post-rock, then listen to this. This seems like an album that is for people who are used to listening to post-rock albums, who are used to very long songs that take a while to do what they want to do. Yes, then I strongly recommend it if you listen to post-rock. If this is something you're hearing about, you're like, I'll check it out, and then you check out one of the songs, like, this could be interesting. Definitely check it out, because I think with repeated listens, you'll actually really come to enjoy this.
How many times did you listen to this album?
I'm gonna say I got about 12 listens.
Really? Because I have you destroyed. I've listened to this album probably like 25 times, which is crazy. Like, I listen to it every day, multiple times, and as a result, like, I can tell you exactly what tracks I love and which ones I don't like, which is why I feel so strongly on the third track, because it annoys me. Especially after 3 listens, it got boring, but the other songs, the first one, Fuck Off, Get Free, Austerity Blues, What We Love Is Not Enough, Let Little Ones Run, those 4 songs keep continuing to grow on me. Like, What We Love Is Not Enough, first time I heard it, I actually wasn't too big on it. Same with like the next few listens, and now it's like it's up there. I still put Austerity Blues above it.
Mm-hmm.
I like Austerity Blues more, but What We Love Is Not Enough, definitely up there.
I was consistently, for me, at least my listening experience, I was consistently liking Austerity Blues, Fuck Off Get Free, and What We Love Was Not Enough. I was like, started out liking them, liked them even more the more I listened to them. I think the track that really sneaked up on me was Little Ones Run.
I
thought that when I first started listening to it, I thought it was just kind of filler, and then I really started digging what it was doing. So, anything else?
If they're going to start on a post-rock album, what should they start on? And then move into this.
Oh, that's actually a good thing. We should approach this. If you're a music, cinephile, whatever, you're done. if you've never heard, if you're new to music and you want to check out this post-rock thing, here's where you should start. In my opinion, the best post-rock album of all time is Godspeed You Black Emperor's Lift Your Skinny Fist Like It Tends to Heaven.
Absolutely.
I think that album is pretty much perfect. But I would actually not recommend you start with that
Really?
album.
That's what I started with.
Yeah, I would recommend you actually start with a much smaller album of theirs. It's actually an EP, and it's called The Slow Riot for New Zero Canada. It's 27 minutes.
What's it called?
It's called Slow Riot for the New Zero Canada. It's 27 minutes. It has everything that is Godspeed. I think it's like the most digestible of theirs. Like there's not much drone in it.
Okay.
So it kind of is consistently, has a lot of ideas, so it's consistently getting to each new idea, and it transitions really well. I would start with that. But Godspeed is pretty harsh music. Not really harsh, but it can be, pretty intense. And post-rock can be beautiful. And if you want to listen to beautiful post-rock, I would check out Sigur Rós, who just look up Sigur Rós on YouTube and click on one of their songs, and you're going to get a really beautiful song that is just mind-blowingly beautiful. Other bands, I'm just going to throw them out there. Yindi Halda's album, Enjoy Eternal Bliss, is incredible. Explosions in the Sky is not a very good band, so don't listen to them no matter how many people tell you. Explosions in the Sky is overrated. Slint is the founders of post-rock, and their album Spiderland, I think, is amazing, and it was the very first post-rock album I think ever existed, and it is amazing how incredibly unique that album is. Even though the album's founded a genre and everyone is built off of it, it still feels all to itself. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I think if you are a punk fan, if you're into emo rock, because a lot of our friends are into emo rock, check out the band The World Is a Beautiful Place, and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die. The first full-length LP came out, and it is a post-rock album. At least, it's an emo rock, post-rock. It has so much influence for post-rock, it's so good. Check out those albums if you want to get into post-rock.
Alright, so big ones. Godspeed You Black Emperor. The World Is a Beautiful Place, and I'm Not Afraid to Die. There we go.
And then Sigur Rós, most definitely Sigur Rós.
Or Godspeed You Black Emperor's first EP.
Not the first EP. It's not the first EP.
It's not the first one?
Just look up Slow Ride for New Zero Canada.
There we go.
Alright, folks. Thanks for listening. Sorry if it's long-winded. Sorry if we go on ranting for a while. This is our first time doing this. We're going to get better and better the more we do. So if you enjoyed it this time, you're going to enjoy it even more next time because we get even better at it. So thanks for listening. Dylan, what should we end this thing on?
I don't know. How about I just say, I'm Dylan.
And I'm John.
And this is the
Musical Suds.
I forgot what it was for a second.
And the day